Like, hey, buddy. Oh! Oh! I'm breakdancing in the middle of the street. Don't bother me.
Oh, shit.
I don't know if I told you this or not. My grandma was a bus driver.
I don't remember for sure.
Yeah, my grandma was a bus driver for over 28 years. She retired. I remember when she retired. She had 0 accidents. She had 0 incidents where children got lost. And she never missed a day. 28 years.
Impressive.
Yeah. And she was a bus driver for the school district. And she was very good at her job. I remembered she was so adamant that she wanted to be the bus driver for me and my sister. She switched routes multiple times whenever my family moved. And I remember back when we were on Rocky Fork, I remembered she drove bus 17 is what it was, bus 17. And it was... I remember, like, every time my grandma would pull up and we weren't outside, she'd be honking the horn, just being like, get out here right now. And yeah, that was
Wait, motherfuckers.
Well, no, I mean, I heard my grandma swear a few times, but no, she wasn't. She in front of the kids, she never swore. But
she was thinking it though.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there was some troublemakers, especially back on the Rocky Fork route. Some of the kids were just absolutely like. There was one kid would not stop cussing, like all the time. It was just like every 2 words, it was the F-bomb. It was like, holy f***ing shit, holy f***, dude, what, man, what the f***, how the f*** are you f***ing doing that, dude, wow, f***ing shit. Like, and I'm like, wow, like even me, I was like listening, I was used to listening to rap music at that point, and even I'm just like, dude, like, you're trying way too hard to sound grown up. This kid's like 14, 15 years old, and he's pretending he's grown.
Yeah.
And my grandma basically one time, like, he, instead of using, you're supposed to go to the front of the bus and exit at the front of the bus near the bus driver. Instead, he breaks open the emergency door at the back and hops out that way. And he was just like, it's easier for me to get out. And then she's like, if you do that again, you're not riding my bus anymore. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. This is Mr. Nightmare, scariest things that happened to school buses. Here we go.
July 15th, 1976, Chowchilla, California. A day that the town would like to forget forever, yet remains a part of its history. At around 4 p.m., school bus driver Ed Ray was driving 26 students of Dairyland Elementary School home from a summer class trip to the Chowchilla Fairgrounds swimming pool. Ray was described as a humble rancher with a humble day job. Stocky, about 55 years old, a guy you would not want to pick a fight with, a guy who works with his hands and doesn't talk much. On this particular day, Ed's bus was rowdy, but the kids all loved him for his patience and reliability. The kids were all loud and excited after just having spent the afternoon swimming. Some of them were even singing, but when the bus turns onto Avenue 21, Ray sees a white Dodge van blocking the road with its door open. He tries to weave around the empty van when a guy in overalls with a pantyhose covering his face jumps out in front of the bus with a revolver. The man walks to the driver's side window and asks Ed, with no intimidation in his voice, "Would you open the door, please?" Ed opens it. 2 more identically dressed figures jump in, one with a rifle which is quickly pointed at Ed. Everybody goes to the back of the bus. The one without a rifle starts to drive, and the one with the revolver hops in the van to follow them. They drive about a mile and park the bus in a bamboo thicket. The entire ride was apparently so silent that it added to the pure horror of it. The bus was hidden near the Chowchilla River, and 12 kids were ushered into the white van that was following the bus. Ray and the other 14 kids got into the back of the second van that was waiting at the location, this one green. There was a partition separating the driver's seat to the back of the van, and all the windows were sealed. Ed and all the kids sat in the backs of these vans for 11 whole hours, in the pitch black and extreme heats, all the while scared for their lives, not knowing what was going to happen next. Some of the older kids started to sing songs to try to lighten the incredibly horrible setting and make the younger kids feel better. Songs like "If You're Happy and You Know It." Meanwhile, back in town, it only took 15 minutes after the bus not showing up that parents began to wonder what was going on. That's how punctual Ed always was. Within the hour, the missing bus was being talked about on the local news stations. Parents helped police by tracing the route the bus usually took, and by that evening, they found the abandoned bus. Within hours, 30 FBI agents arrived on the scene, and an intense investigation was underway to find the kids and Ed. Late that night, the vans finally arrive at a rock quarry 100 miles away in Livermore, 3:30 in the morning, at which point Ed had been awake for 24 hours. The back doors of the van swing open and two guys are waiting. Ed is the first one out. He's handed a flashlight and then told to strip and then go down a hole with a ladder in it. Above ground, roll call is being taken for the children, and their names are written as they're made to leave the bus one by one. Then they're stripped and sent to join Ed down the ladder into what was referred to as the hole, which turned out to be an old moving van, which had been placed in a large dugout hole 12 feet underground. Ed immediately worried that the ceiling would cave in or that they'd suffocate. However, there were two air shafts, hoses that ran above ground to a tree. There were also some mattresses on the ground and a pathetic amount of necessities. Wonder Bread, peanut butter, potato chips, water jugs, and some holes carved for toilets. After all the kids were inside, one of the captors said, "We'll be back for you." Then a steel plate slid over the entrance and was weighted down by something. They of course begged to be let out, and many of the younger children screamed. Then they heard repeated thumps on top of the van. They couldn't see it, but their captors were shoveling dirt on top of the van, burying them alive.
Holy crap.
Panic ensued in the trailer when it was realized what was happening. Ed tried his best to keep everybody calm. Ed and Michael Marshall, the oldest kid in the group, who was 14, started to push at the lid to try and open it, but it was pointless. So by now, Ed instructed everyone to eat and get some rest. 12 hours later, the food was all already consumed, and the ventilation system that was keeping the van cool stopped working, and the hot July air started to fill the tight space. On top of that, the roof of the van started to cave in, and Ed knew time was very limited. The survivors, now adults, recount that around this time, as the walls and ceiling of the van were caving in and there was no food left, that they were starting to realize they wouldn't likely make it out of this alive. Ed and Michael started to pile up the mattresses in the trailer to get to the roof, which had been covered with a heavy sheet of metal and weighted down with two 100-pound industrial batteries. After hours of effort, Ray and Michael wedged the lid open with a piece of wood and moved the batteries. They then dug away the remainder of the debris blocking the entrance. 16 hours after they had entered the van, the group emerged and walked to the quarry's guard shack, where a security guard called the police. Ed and the children were brought to a nearby jail, where they were fed and interviewed by police. So the captors were three men, Frederick Newall Woods, James Schoenfeld, and his brother Richard. Frederick's family owned the quarry that the van was buried at. The three men were finding themselves in financial struggles, so they planned to hijack the bus and demand a $5 million ransom to release the group. The men would flee when they saw the group escaped though, but they were found after a 2-week manhunt. They were found guilty and sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. Richard Schoenfeld was released in 2012, and James Schoenfeld was paroled on August 7, 2015. Frederick Woods was denied parole 15 times because he owned the quarry. However, in March of this year, he was granted parole as well. Rightfully so, people of Chowchilla and people around the world were sickened at the fact that the three men who committed this kind of monstrous act could ever roam the streets again.
Yeah.
If Michael and Ed hadn't stepped up and dug the group out of that van, they likely would not have survived.
Yeah.
Ed Ray died at 91 in May 17th of 2012, but he is still to this day remembered as a hero.
Absolutely.
What?
Absolutely. Jesus. That is just...
I really hope local people of that area manage to hunt those dudes down and disappear them without getting caught.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hope they make them disappear like they tried to make them disappear.
Mm-hmm. Again, I have a very low tolerance for people who seek to harm children. I have a very, very low tolerance for that. And to think that those three men are now out. They're probably still being monitored and shit like that. I hope they are at least. But given the messed up correctional and like justice system that they have in California right now, I don't know. I really don't know. Jesus God. But big ups to the bus driver and big ups to like the oldest kid for stepping up and taking initiative and getting them out of there. You know, it's imperative that, you know, taking action and not just sitting there and letting everything happen is the most important thing that you can do. Like, solve problems. Like, problem solve. Get things rolling. Like, that's,
especially in the situation where you've just been left there, you know.
Exactly.
It's like, there's very likely if they threw dirt on top of it, they left afterwards.
Oh,
like,
yes.
It's not like we're going to dig out and they're going to be standing there with guns pointed at us, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, let's fucking get out of here while they fucking left us here, like, if we can.
And I guarantee you, Ed and the oldest kid basically were doing they
that could have been so much worse too. Like, imagine if they hadn't buried them in dirt. Imagine if they poured cement over it.
Oh my God!
Like that, there wouldn't have been an escape at that point.
Exactly. And
like they just planned to come back and get them out with jackhammers later or whatever, you know. Like everybody would have suffocated in there.
Well, I mean, the air unit that was like keeping the air circulated had broken, so they were probably going to die within the next like 12 hours if no action was taken.
Yep.
I mean, you're talking about a lot of kids underground being buried alive. That's just, dude. Again, I'm grateful that I never had to go through anything like that. That would be a horrific scenario, and I don't think I would be able to sleep in tight quarters ever again. Like, I've slept in like little micro apartments and stuff like that. I don't think I'd be able to do that if I went through something like that, because I would be horrified.
Yeah, I think it pisses me off, like, law-wise, because it's just like, while they didn't actually cause physical harm to any kids, they definitely caused psychological harm to kids. Like, because I'm sure a lot of those kids never forgot that.
No.
Like, you know.
Like, all the
kids.
kids.
It's not something you just forget happens.
Like, all those kids are scarred for life now.
Yep.
Because those dudes only thought of themselves as just like, well, we want to make money real quick, so, you know, let's kidnap a bunch of kids and bury them alive. Dude, how fucked in the head are you?
I don't think you should ever be able to get parole for something like that.
No.
That's bullshit.
I think it's because no one died is the main reason why. If one of the kids would have passed away from, you know, lack of oxygen or, you know, a medical issue.
It's like being like, this guy like went and put an entire, like, enough poison in a town's water supply to kill the entire population of the town. But because they caught it as soon as he did it and caught him and shut it off and nobody was harmed, we let him out on patrol after on parole after 20 years. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
I wish they were, but that actually happened. I mean, there was a dude who did try to poison the water supply, and he did eventually get paroled.
What the fuck?
I know, it's crazy to think about.
I don't think you should just be let out just because your plan to kill a bunch of people failed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you had that intent, then you should be locked up for the rest of your life.
That's just like there was a law that they were trying to pass in California. They wanted to make they wanted to make attempted suicide punishable by death.
That makes no sense.
I know. It's literally insane. The lawmakers have no sense of reality anymore. They're not on the ground. They don't know what it's really like out there.
Oh, you tried to
self-terminate.
Yeah. By the way, remember, you can't really talk about that on
that's right,
YouTube.
yeah.
Post-production Nate.
Hey, post-production Nate, I apologize for, calling you a piece of garbage earlier, but, I need you to do your job. Please.
It's like, oh, you failed? Oh, let us get that for you. Know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Anyway,
so let's keep going.
What you just heard may perhaps be the most well-known near tragedy to happen to a school bus full of children. However, it's a big world, and there are unfortunately many other horrific events that don't end up on the news. Then 14-year-old Donald, who wished to have his last name left out, was a student at a high school in Virginia and a member of the school's band. The bus driver's name was Robert, but everyone called him Bob. Like Ed Ray, he also seemed to enjoy his job and enjoyed the company of the students he drove, albeit these students were a little older. On October 20th of 1995, Bob was driving a class of band students to and from their field trip. Donald was in this bus. The festival they went to ended late at night, around 10, and the drive back to the school where the students would be dropped off was a 45-minute drive away. The bus was on Route 58, a highway that runs through Virginia. Given the rural setting, there were basically no other cars on the road, but even when one car was relatively close to the back of the bus, it wasn't any cause for alarm at first. But when the car would start to tailgate the bus, instead of simply going around it, especially when the bus and the car were the only vehicles in sight, the students near the back of the bus started to realize and discuss amongst themselves how strange it was. Bob the bus driver would switch into the left lane to get the driver off his ass, and all the kids watched as the car floored it past the bus in the right lane. Some kids shouting things out the windows, to which the chaperone on the bus told the kids to knock it off. Donald recalls thinking the car was gone and it was just some aggressive late-night driver, when suddenly the bus slammed on the brakes so hard that everybody was slightly lifted from their seats, and there was an ear-piercing shriek from the brakes. The bus came to a halt on the middle of the highway, and Bob told everyone to remain calm. The bus went into reverse for a few moments, then back in drive to another halt. Bob shouted at everybody on board the bus to keep quiet and don't panic. And hearing those words made Donald, along with his friends he was sitting with, and every other student on the bus whisper amongst themselves nervously. There was shouting from outside the bus from multiple men's voices. Then the bus doors opened, and two men wearing black pullover masks armed with handguns came on board, yelling at everyone on the bus to shut up in response to a few students near the front screaming. One of the men with the guns announced to the entire bus to empty their wallets of all cash and take any jewelry off and to give it to them. They went row to row with their guns pointed at the kids, as each student took out their wallets and placed whatever small amounts of money broke high school students could be carrying in their wallets into the plastic bag the guy was holding, and the girls would take off their jewelry. Some students would scream as the gun was pointed in their faces, which would be a natural reaction for some. Donald described the moment he had a gun pointed at his head at 14 as emotionally traumatizing, that he felt his entire existence would end if he moved or looked at the guy the wrong way. The men didn't even make it to the back of the bus before they decided to leave in a hurry, most likely panicked that other cars would pass by and stop. The car floored it away down Route 58 with its lights off. Its license plates had been covered, indicating it was a planned attack, if the guns and masks weren't already indication enough. Everyone on board made it home okay, just most of the students, as well as Bob and the chaperone, had been robbed. Unfortunately, bus robberies are a common thing though, and while most probably aren't caught on video, what you're about to see was a school bus traveling along the N4 in Whitbank one Friday night this past February was attacked by armed robbers. Who the fuck robs a school bus?
Like, what kind of bank do you think you're going to make robbing a bunch of kids?
Again, it's like you expect most criminals to have a logical process. Most of them don't. Most of them are crimes at random.
True.
That's unfortunate.
The teachers did not know it at the time, but the robbers had laid out rocks on the highway, intending to cause damage to vehicles so that the drivers would stop and the robbers could steal from them at gunpoint. The bus was carrying 4 teachers and the driver. There were no pupils in the vehicle. They were traveling back to the school after an athletics meeting when they hit the rocks and ruptured a tire. There were 3 robbers. 2 were armed with guns and 1 with a knife.
Jesus.
Give me a phone. Give me a phone.
The assailants stole cell phones, cash, jewelry, and a smartwatch. The bus driver was hit in the face with a gun and sustained a minor jaw injury, but that was the only injury. The robbers then fled the scene, and eventually a tow truck later pulled over to assist. One of the teachers borrowed the tow truck driver's phone and called her fiancé, who notified the authorities. Police soon arrived, and an investigation began. The robbers have still not been identified. Since buses can carry a lot of people, depending on the intent of the people looking to target them, they may see extra dollar signs just based on the amount of people on board alone. Even though you don't often hear about these things happening on the news, they do happen. In such situations where people are armed with guns, it's always best to just comply with their orders.
Damn, man. Damn.
Only time I probably wouldn't comply with the orders of someone who was armed with a gun is if they were trying to take me somewhere.
That, yeah, again.
It's like, you can take me so far within, like, a comfortable, like, limit of, like, a public distance, and then at a point I'm probably going to try to fucking take you out in some way at the risk of my own life, because I'm not going to end up in chains in a fucking box shipped overseas somewhere alive. You know what I mean? It's like, me personally, I would rather get taken out by the gun than end up over there. I know some people don't see it the same way. They'd be like, I'd rather live my life in chains than not live anymore. I'm just like, I'd rather die than live my life in chains.
Okay, so they actually did a movie with Carl Malden as Ed Ray. Wow. That's pretty cool. Damn, man. How about something that could have ended very, very, very badly?
Yeah.
Damn. All right. Well,
Ages 5 to 14. There were 5-year-olds on that bus. Damn.
I was gonna say, is it too late to take a baseball bat to these fuckers?
No, technically not, if you can find them, I guess.
Yep. I guess. Okay. Well, anyway, everyone, I think that's gonna do it for this one. This was scariest things to happen to school buses. This was definitely a very, very scary one, because, you know, as someone who's ridden buses a lot, I would be very frightened if something like this happened.
Also, these rung a lot more real than the Mr. Nightmare and scary compilation stories always do. Like, you know, a lot of times it's just stories from somebody online that you're like, yeah, could that have been real or maybe not? Like, you know, but these all came off as very true stories, obviously.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it, everyone. That was Mr. Nightmare's Scariest Things to Happen on School Buses. Liked that one a lot, and if you all want to see more from Mr. Nightmare, click his name in the title of the video. And until next time, I'm Nate.
I am Nick.
Take care, everybody. Peace.